Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell the truth about silver. Today is Sunday the 24th of May 2020, and yesterday we published our gold and silver weekly update for the weekend in the 22nd of May, and we've placed a link to that podcast video in the description box below. Now, at the end of yesterday's podcast, we stated the following, quote, "The one area we suggest that all of us pay attention to, and that is the political battle looming over US-China relations, and this is a subject we shall address in tomorrow's video. This is the one geopolitical subject or situation on the horizon that could indeed potentially worsen global trade and even spark some possible military infractions. So stay tuned." Unquote. You see, the past couple, if not few years, we've witnessed how trade tensions with China have had such a dramatic effect on world trade, leading to sanctions and tariffs, which proved detrimental to global growth and adversely affected equity markets around the world. Then, last year, and towards the end of last year, tensions eased, trade agreements were made, and it looked as if these pressures were subsiding, and the United States also looked as if 2020 was going to prove to be a most prosperous year, with ever-continuing lower levels of unemployment and ever-increasing equity market highs. Then the coronavirus pandemic struck, and relations with China have since soured. More than this, with the Trump presidency now in a precarious situation, with the US elections less than 6 months away, policymakers are rightly or wrongly, and we're not going to judge here, but are rightly or wrongly looking for someone to blame. And clearly that person or country is clearly going to be President Xi and China. To make matters worse, China's recent crackdown in Hong Kong is serving to exacerbate the situation. And we shall now look at two articles published by Bloomberg today, which simply highlights the case. Bloomberg Article dated May 24th, 2020. Headline: Beijing urges United States to drop wishful thinking of changing China. The US should give up its wishful thinking of changing China, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said, warning that some in America were pushing relations to a new Cold War. China has no intention to change the United States, nor to mention replace the United States. It is also wishful thinking for the US to change China, Wang said Sunday during his annual news briefing on the sidelines of National People's Congress meetings in Beijing. The US-China relationship has worsened dramatically in the past few months as America became one of the countries worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic, which was first discovered in the Chinese city of Wuhan. The world's two biggest economies have clashed on a range of issues from trade to human rights, with Beijing's latest move to tighten its grip on Hong Kong, setting up another showdown between US President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. Some US political forces are taking hostage of China-US relations, attempting to push the ties to the brink of so-called New Cold War, Wang said. This is dangerous and will endanger global peace. Tensions also spiked after China announced Thursday that the NPC would write sweeping legislation into Hong Kong law to criminalize the harshest criticism of China and the ruling party. The move drew swift condemnation from pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong who defied virus-related social distancing measures and rallied in the city centre even as Wang spoke. Secretary of State Michael Pompeo called the measure a disastrous proposal and indicated that it could lead the United States to reconsider the Hong Kong's special trade status. Wang on Sunday repeated China's stance that Hong Kong affairs were its internal affairs and said the principle of non-interference must be upheld by all countries. He said implementing the national security law would only affect a small number of people. US lawmakers have advanced several pieces of legislation targeting China in recent weeks with bipartisan support amid mounting calls for lawmakers to punish Beijing for its alleged failure to disclose information early on about the spread of COVID-19. The pandemic has cost almost 100,000 American lives and resulted in tens of millions in job losses. One of the bills passed by the United States Senate would delist from American stock exchanges Chinese companies that refuse to comply with US accounting disclosure regulations and could lead to the barring of tech giants like Alibaba Group Holdings and Baidu Inc. Xi said Saturday he won't let China return to its days as a planned economy, pushing back against US criticism that the nation has failed to deliver on promised reforms. We've come to the understanding that we should not ignore the blindness of the market, nor should we return to the old path of a planned economy, Xi told political advisers gathered in Beijing for their annual legislative sessions, according to the official Xinhua news agency. End of article. Bloomberg article dated May 24th. US-China trade tensions are back. Global economy week ahead. Carmen Reinhardt, the World Bank's incoming chief economist, just declared that globalization is probably dead, and flaring trade tensions between the world's two biggest economies is supporting that theory. At the National People's Congress, the pinnacle of its political calendar, China on Friday reiterated its commitment to implementing the Phase 1 trade deal signed with the United States. The agreement, signed in January, compels it to buy goods in goals that seemed lofty even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit demand and battered supply chains. Yet within hours, White House economic aide Kevin Hassett told CNN the US is closely studying economic penalties for China related to the nation's plan to enact sweeping national security legislation in Hong Kong. That's not all. President Donald Trump escalated his rhetoric against China over the pandemic. The Senate approved legislation that could lead to Chinese companies being barred from trading on US stock exchanges, and a retirement savings plan for federal workers deferred a plan to include Chinese stocks in its investments. Beijing's fight isn't just with Washington. Last week it slapped anti-dumping duties on Australian barley for 5 years and suspended meat imports from 4 processing plants in the nation after the government in Canberra called for an independent investigation into the origins of the coronavirus. With China's NPC continuing this week and Trump never far away from a microphone, investors will be on the outlook for more comments to help decipher the situation. End of article. We began writing this podcast this morning at 10 a.m, where we produced it up to this point. However, it's now 1700 hours, GMT +1, and this is what has come up on the BBC in the last hour. BBC article, dated 24th of May. Hong Kong police fire tear gas as protesters decried China's security law plan. Police in Hong Kong have fired tear gas and water cannon at protesters rallying against China's plans to impose a new security law on the territory. Thousands of demonstrators have been marching through the city centre. Police say 120 have been arrested. Earlier, 200 senior politicians from around the world issued a joint statement criticising China's plan. But China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the legislation should be brought in without the slightest delay. China is seeking to pass a law that would ban treason, secession, sedition, and subversion in the territory. Activists fear it's an attempt to limit freedoms and silence Beijing's opponents. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam, who is seen as part of the pro-Beijing political establishment, has pledged full support for the proposed law and said the city's rights would remain unchanged. China has dismissed concerns that the legislation would harm foreign investors in Hong Kong, an important financial centre, and lashed out at meddling countries. End of article. We can see from the article the immediate concerns and after effects of the proposed new law even before it's implemented. This is a potential tinderbox, and with the United States and the West critical of China, this will only exacerbate the situation. There are many more articles we could publish on this subject just from today's news. However, we hope we're conveying the point that this is an issue that needs to be watched closely. with central banks around the world spending whatever it takes to help overcome the global recession, and then trade and political issues with China likely to worsen considerably, this can only mean even more stimulus will be necessary. If we see equity markets fall as a result, then this will serve to help gold in particular and silver in a catch-up situation. Now, albeit it might take time to feed through, but nevertheless, the foundations are being laid. As people go back to work in the West, we're no longer out of the woods yet. And frankly, as we stated last week, there is still worse to come. What do you think? Do share your thoughts. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell sign so that you're notified of our videos as and when they are published. Not forgetting, we update our Richard and Greg channel every few days, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to that one too. We hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer: Illuminati Silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.